I want to thank you guys for coming and making these workshops, eventful, and to see all you artists participating and learning is great. Um, we're thankful that you guys are here, and in order to keep offering these free lessons, Chuck Jones Center for Creativity, we're switching to a donation model. So that's anything that you folks can give, your parents can help donate is appreciated. There's no requirement. It's to help us offer these classes to everybody. We also offer private lessons and semi-private lessons. So if you want a private lesson with one of the artists, or if there's a group of you that want to get together and do a private lesson, then you can get one-on-one, more personal training to help you specifically with whatever you want to work on. But want to thank you guys again for making these classes possible. If you want to find out more information about the private classes or make a donation, your folks can go to chuckjonescenter.org. That's chuckjonescenter.org. Okay, so let's get started. How you guys all doing this week? You guys been drawing? I'm sure you have. That's good to know. That's good to know. Well, if you don't know, and if you've attended the classes for this week already, it's Women's History Month. So all of us, we're going to be talking about different artists. Mary Blair, I think Lee is going to be covering Mary Blair. I think Ben's covering a Marvel artist, some pretty awesome female artists. Regardless, male, female, awesome artists. I'm going to talk about my first artist is Jessie Willcox Smith. She's been around like in the 1860s is when she was born. And you have to understand, back in the day, women were not allowed to be artists. Women, back in the day, some women had to dress up like men and disguise themselves so they can go out and paint and draw because it was frowned upon. It was like only men can do this. But Jessie Willcox Smith did a lot of illustrations and paintings for mostly with children and young kids. So we'll take a look at a few of her pieces. This next one, if you take a look at it, look at the composition. That's pretty awesome. If you take a look at that, and remember we talked about composition earlier, like how your eye moves around the page. And her style is soft. It's soft and light. It's I'm not sure if you're familiar with Maxfield Parrish, but he has that same kind of soft touch. It has a more fine art illustration drawing. This next one I really like a lot. It's a popular one of hers. And you can see that it's a different style from manga or animation or cartoons. And then let's take a look at this next piece. See, take a look at the drawing and look at the use of color. The first place your eye goes to is the lady's head. Remember I told you like contrast is where your eye will go to most? And if you look at her head, her face is a different color than the face of the other kids. So not only is she pulling you there, but she's highlighting that person. And then if you follow the composition of where the heads and the dark and lights are, you're going to move around the page. And it keeps you in like a weird, funky circle. So you don't leave the page. At the top, you got the trees and the bushes in the background. That kind of keeps you inside. And then this next one I like a lot too. You see how she just by the subtle shadows under the cheeks of the child going like this, it portrays weight. It's some really fine drawing right there. It's a lot of craft, a lot of skill. She even has the map behind, and the detail on the map, as though it's kind of loose. It's pretty awesome. I don't know if you know about what we're doing this week, but this week we're going to start talking about story. And this month we're going to be doing a comic. So you can do a comic strip, a comic page, and then the end we're going to come up with a comic book. So it's important that you stay focused and follow through, because by the end of the month we're going to collect your pages and have them printed. So, and we create an anthology. Anybody know the story of Peter Rabbit? Oh, good for you, Keen. Look, you already got a head start. Raise your hand if you know the story of Peter Rabbit. Peter Rabbit was done by an English author and illustrator, Beatrix Potter. It's one of the most famous children's books around. Over 100 years old. She grew up on a farm, took classes once a month to go take oil painting classes once a month, and then she wasn't really involved with a lot of people, so she would stay around her farm and draw a lot. And she did drawings and illustrations of flora, fauna, different issues, different things that she would do. She would do mushrooms. She was like she would do really good illustrations. Scott, if we could go to that next slide, please. So Peter Rabbit, if you're not familiar with her, is one of her most famous books. It's a very popular children's book. The drawings are still appealing. And if you look, they're similar to Jessie Willcox Smith. They're soft. They're soft. They're not hard-edged like Full Metal Alchemist, or they're not sharp. They're soft, fuzzy. They're friendly, warm drawings. We'll take a couple of looks at her other pictures. She is a fine illustrator, so she could draw not just rabbits, but she could take a look at a plant and she could draw it exactly like she's seen it. Next slide, please. And if you look at her composition, she doesn't have a border on her page, but she uses the edge of the drawing and the color and the paint as her frame. That frames the cat on top of the step. Next drawing, please. Unfortunately for her, she didn't copyright her stuff when she published in the United States. And if you heard of Peter Cottontail, someone took Peter Cottontail, originally who was Peter Rabbit, changed its name to Peter Cottontail because they thought it was fancier in the story, but it ends up changing back to Peter Rabbit. But Peter Cottontail and Peter Rabbit, if you hear them both, same character. Okay, so you know how I did a sketch of Full Metal Alchemist last week? Created by a woman, drawn and created by a woman in Japan. Full Metal Alchemist. One of my favorite anime, manga kind of bits. She recently published a book. Here are a couple of excerpts from her book. Next slide, please. Next. Once again, female artist and author. Now, out of these three authors and artists that we're talking about, two of them wrote their stories, but Jessie Willcox Smith was just an illustrator. She didn't write any stories. She didn't create her characters. She was hired by people to do illustrations. Now, I've seen a lot of you guys' characters throughout these last couple of months. You can take your character and your story to the next level. It just depends on how you want to portray it, what your style is, what you want to set it up. So this next month, we're going to focus on kind of getting that started for you. Next slide, please. Next slide. Pretty awesome work. Pretty awesome work. Okay, so this month is Women's History Month. We may talk about several artists, but these are a couple of my favorite, few of my favorite ones. Jessie Willcox Smith, similar to Mary Cassatt, who was another famous artist, did lots of children. Children are kind of hard to draw because if you noticed, and someone was talking about proportions. We were talking about a little bit about proportions the other week. But if you notice, an adult's head is pretty proportionate to their body. However, a child's head is huge. It's like a candy apple on a stick. Got this big old head in this little body. Seriously, you laugh, but you think, oh, why are you pointing to her? But if you look, a baby's head huge. And then all the features of the baby, they're kind of compressed. They're all in a little area. They're all in this one little area. And as they grow older, the rest of the head catches up. The rest of the face catches up with the head. It's pretty amazing. When you draw a baby, always, some people, when they draw a baby for the first time, they forget how big the head is. So they end up drawing a full-grown head on a little body. And it just looks like a midget. Nothing wrong with midgets. Midgets are cool. I have nothing against midgets, but that's not how you draw a baby. So generally, baby, big head, little stumpy body. And then depending on how you want to portray your baby, you could do a serious baby, you could do a cartoony baby. Babies usually big eyes. And then like maybe a little bit of hair. But if I take it as a challenge, try drawing a baby. Try to draw a baby. First, do it out of your imagination, and then look at a baby and try drawing a baby. It will be a challenge. So we're going to start talking about story, because in a comic book, comic strip, anything you follow, there's generally a story. I've seen your characters, and you guys got some great characters. What is your character about? Tater, you've got characters. You got characters, right? What's their story?
Depends which one in what universe.
Okay. So that's something to think about, because it depends on which one. So your story, your basic story element has plot, characters, conflict, setting, and theme. So you said it depends on the character, which is number 2. And then it depends on the place, number 4. It's your setting. So these are things to think about on what you want to do for your story if you have an idea. And when I talk to you about story, you guys, it doesn't have to be a big fancy story. A beginning, a middle, and end is basically a story. You know, it doesn't have to be some big epic, you know, Star Wars. It can be a simple story. Is guy enters the scene. There's a banana on the ground. Guy slips on banana. He doesn't see the banana. Guy slips on banana and falls. End of story. Could be as simple as that. Take a look at your nursery rhymes. 3 little pigs, the 3 bears. You got your characters. You got your story. You got your conflict. Conflict of the 3 little bears. You know, who's been in my bed, who ate my porridge. The setting, it's at their house. So there's a couple of things we can do. We can do our own story, which gives you the freedom to do whatever you want. You could do whatever you want. You could do your own story, or we could do collaborative. So the collaborative could be, we agree on a story and we all take a part of it. But the challenge with that is if everyone doesn't keep up and is on the same page and they don't contribute to their part of the story, we're going to have a gap in the finished comic. So who wants to do their own story and who would like to do a collaborative? So let's see a show of hands for your own story. Wow, okay. All right, Kat, we got Kat. Anybody else wants to do their own story?
Jay would like to do his own story.
Who was that?
Jay?
Jay? All right, Jay, that's good. Anybody else? Because your own story gives you your own creative freedom. Liliana, you want to do your own story? Heather, you guys want to do your own story? You guys could work on a story together if you want. Maybe.
That's true.
You guys want to create a story, Tater? Because the thing with doing your own story is you have creative license to do whatever you want. You could take your character and it doesn't have to make sense. I have friends that go to Comic-Con and they get together and they will each do a couple of pages and then they put together a book. And then they sell it at Comic-Con. And each story is different. It doesn't have to make sense. It could make sense to you, you know, but this is your opportunity to put something together, get it printed. You can use color. You can use spot color. You can use full color. You can use, maybe just use one color throughout the whole comic. Maybe it's a character of your color, everything black and white. Because the thing is, we only have 4 weeks to do this, guys. And you got to stay on track. Because if you don't stay on track and you start falling behind by the end of the month, we're going to be ready to collect your work and go to print. And that has to be ready to go. So who wants to do a collaborative? Nathaniel. Liliana and Heather, did you guys want to do a collaborative or you want to do your own story? Keen, what'd you like to do?
Huh?
Got it, Liliana. Do you want to do your own story? Thank you, Heather. Do you want to do your own story, Keen, or do you want to do collaborative?
Why do you do a story? I can't do a story of someone else if we're on video. How do we check how the other person's doing and stuff? I don't know. I'm just confused.
I'm sorry, buddy. I'm having a hard time kind of hearing you.
I have honestly no idea either. Honestly, I have no
Do you want to
idea.
do a comic strip and do your own story, or do you want to do one with other people? All right, you think about that and I'll get back to you. Mr. A Nobody, would you like to participate and do your own comic, or would you like to do a group effort? Maybe? Nathaniel wants to do collaborative. Kat wants to do her own. Lot, is that something you want to participate in? Lottie? Avery? Do you want to do the comic? Do you want to do a collaborative? Do your own? All right. And Laura, anybody else want to participate? Okay, that works. Avery, that's fine. So just so you know that we have 4 weeks to do this. So it looks like Nathaniel, I'm not sure if I'm getting any feedback on anyone else. George and Victoria, did you guys want to try to work on the comic? Because that's what we're going to be doing this month. You could do your own story, your own design, your own characters. Okay, perfect. Do you want to do your own, George and Victoria, or do you want to do a collaborative? So George and Victoria, is that you guys going to do your own story? Okay. I got you down for your own story. So who wants to do the collaborative? Anyone else wants to do collaborative? Because so far I just have Nathaniel signed up for the collaborative. Keen, you want to do the collaborative?
Why not?
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else is on definite maybes then? Okay, so between Nathaniel and Keen, you two and I will come up with an idea for a story. So that's what we're going to talk about today is your story and your characters. They're usually separate, but you can work in both. If you want to if your story is character driven, then you can work on both at the same time. If it centers around a character. And when you do a story, if you look at a movie on any story, there's inner conflict. That's if someone's going to do the right or wrong thing. And then there's outer conflict. There's a war going on. Someone wants them to do something. They're being pushed to do something. In a story, your character either changes, something happens to your character and they change, or they change something outside of them. They change the world or the world changes them. Now that's the basic idea of a story. So you think about what you want your character to do. Slip on a banana. And you got to keep in mind though, doing a comic is a lot of work because after you get your story, you have to write a small script. Is there talking involved? There's a lot of comic strips where there is no talking. So you don't have to worry about placement of your words. Lots to think about. Paneling. How are you going to lay out your comic? How is it going to be paneled? How are you going to tell your story? Are you going to have a big shot, a big scene where, I don't know, you're setting an establishing shot and there's a house, maybe with horses in the front, and then it breaks down to, you know, a medium shot. Of a horse, maybe to a close-up on the collar of the horse that says, you know, spirit. You have to think out how you're doing. Comics is what storyboard artists do. When they're doing movies and they're handed a script, you're given creative license to go, how would you set this up? How would you stage this? So do you have an idea for your own story, Tater? So it's something to think about. Pick a character or two. And if you guys want to join and do a collaborative, that's great too. But a story, and you got to think about how many pages you want it to be. It shouldn't be more. I wouldn't do more than 2 pages. And when I say pages, like an 8.5 by 11, like a comic book page. Because that's a lot of work. 1 page is a lot of work. Well, we'll work on that, Keen. Don't worry. We'll work together. Nathaniel is going to work with us. We're going to do a collaborative. We'll do something, you know, not too challenging, but something where you'll get something out of it, where you'll learn the basics of writing a story. You got to have a beginning. Where's your story start? Hey, nobody. Do you have a character? Do you like to draw characters? Anybody that joins this, you know, it's there's no right or wrong. It's what you put in, what you get out. But I tell you, if you want to have something to walk away printed that you can go, hey, look what I got. It's in a book. That'd be something kind of cool. That'd be something kind of cool to do. King, I know you said you didn't have an idea, but it's worth thinking about what ideas do you have. You don't have to tell me now, but think about it. I'm going to give, at the end of this workshop, I'm going to give my studio phone number and email address. So if you have questions, you can write to me and shoot me a line if you have a problem or a challenge that you're working on. And I'll answer you. Nathaniel, do you have an idea for what you'd like to do for a story? What about Liliana and Heather? Do you guys have an idea?
I had sort of this idea for a criminal guy who's trying to get into these houses, but he always fails. Every time, he always fails.
That's funny.
It's sort of like Wile E. Coyote, where he never talks. There's no talking involved.
That's awesome. You know what's awesome about that he doesn't talk? Because you could take that comic and put it in a Spanish magazine, a Japanese magazine, any international magazine, and because there's no talking and it's all acting, they would get it. They would understand it. That's good. All right, that's an idea. And was that you, Nathaniel?
Yes.
Okay. And it's exactly like Wile E. Coyote. Chuck, right before he passed away, I worked with him on a cartoon called Timberwolf. And it was about a wolf that every time he said timber, a tree would hit him in the head, no matter where he was at. So that's a good idea. So a thief that never succeeds. It's like Tom and Jerry, right? Where he's trying to get the mouse, but he never really gets the mouse. It's a good idea. Liliana, Heather, any ideas for you guys? What you guys might want to try to do?
It's a little difficult to explain right now. Maybe after a little bit more development.
But you got an idea. It all starts with an idea. It all starts with an idea. And that idea right now can change anytime. Tater, you've been kind of quiet today. You got any ideas for where you want to take your character? Okay, so when we're talking about story, you want to keep it simple. You only got 2 pages at the most. So you got to think about your script. What happens? Is there dialogue? You want the action in your story to be clean and concise. You ever watch something or read something and it's not clear, so you're not really sure what's going on, you misunderstand it? Good. Kind of ambitious, 3, but I like it. It's better to have more than not enough. But when you're writing your story, you got your beginning, a middle, and an end. So you got to clearly establish what's happening in the beginning. How does it start? If you look at a lot of movies, they start with a wide angle. It's called your establishing shot. And it's to show you where you're at. You know, now if you don't want to show your viewer where you're at and you want to keep it mysterious, like a joke, you know, you got your setup and your punch. If you're trying to keep it mysterious in the beginning and keep everything kind of like tight, close, keep your images abstract where you're not really sure what you're looking at, and then in the final scene you reveal and it's something completely that you weren't expecting, that's the punchline. That's the visual punchline. And then when you get to the middle of your story usually builds up to a climatic point. So in the beginning, Gladiator, one of my favorite movies. It starts out with a lot of action and it builds up, and you got action in the beginning and it establishes the character. You know who the character is, what he's about. They by his actions, his words, you can tell this is a tough dude. And he's a good guy. Stuff happens. He gets imprisoned, he becomes a slave, he starts fighting at the gladiator battles, and he's winning. So as he's winning these battles, it's going to get to a point, though, where he has to face the emperor. And that's your climatic point. That's the point it's been working up to this whole point. And after that climatic point, it comes down. Either everyone's happy or people are sad. And then the end. There's a resolution. There's a resolution to the story. But like I said, your comic strip doesn't have to be epic. Your comic doesn't have to be epic. It could be, like I said, someone slipping on a banana. The whole purpose of the class and the workshop is to understand the whole idea behind creating a comic and story. So you could start out, you could do it in panels, you could do it in however you want. How many characters are in your story? That'll make a difference too. So I have a character I drew a while ago, and he was a turtle. And his name was Rupus. Keen, do you have any characters that you've been working on? No? Ain't nobody. Do you have any characters that you like to draw? Tater, you got any characters that you've been drawing lately? Let's see them. Hey, very cool. That's a pretty finished drawing. That looks good. Good job. Is that a character you might pursue using? I would suggest pick a character you're familiar with. So, someone that's a character that you think you will end up drawing for at least the next few years. Because then you'll be able to draw that character backwards and forward. No, that looked great. That looked great. Hey, nobody, what did you say? What does a comic need, buddy?
Pictures and comedy.
That's true. That's true. Pictures comedy is very helpful, but not all comics or stories are funny. Some of them are serious, right?
Well, those nobody reads.
Okay. But that's like I said, though, there's different ones. You have funny ones, you have scary ones, you have serious ones. X-Men. X-Men's a very popular one. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when that first started. So you can have funny comics and you can have serious action ones. The Avengers, that's an action comic. Chloe, is that your character? Nice. See, you got a name. So think about what is it about her that you could write a story about? Keen, have you got any ideas on what you might want to do? Anything come to you yet? Kat, how's your characters coming along? Because I know you have
Yeah, I have some. Like some of the people who've been going to the other classes, know I've been extremely into drawing dragons lately. So there's a dragon I drew yesterday. Probably won't use this one, especially since I haven't finished the character design yet. But
okay. It's a nice start. It's a good see. And something to think about too is how clean and how detailed you want your character, because you're gonna have to draw them in the different panels, right? Good job.
all right.
I just came across an illustrator who does lots of dragons. One of the best dragons I seen was from Dragonheart with Sean Connery and Dennis Quaid. A turtle, very cool. Do you got a drawing of him? Would you like to share it?
Well, not just do I have a drawing of it, I also have a website of it.
Oh, very cool.
I'll type it in chat. I guess I could show one or two pictures. I'll just go get it.
All right. So dragon, you could do lots of possibilities with a dragon egg. Scott, can I see the next slide, please?
This is just one picture of it. I have many.
Okay. Very cool. I like it. So, what is your character about? What's the story about? Is your character trying to get something? Is your character trying to do something? Like Nathaniel was saying,
My strips have no goal. Like Tango doesn't really have a goal.
What was that?
He doesn't really have a goal.
Okay. But what does he do?
Nothing really. But I wouldn't say he's lazy. He just doesn't do much.
Well, for your story, you can have your character sleeping, wakes up, looks around, and then maybe says, "Oh, I'm exhausted now," and then goes back to sleep.
He's not supposed to be lazy.
What's he supposed to be?
Well, he's very positive about everything.
So does he help people?
No, he just stays home.
Okay. Well, I'm sure he could find something to be positive about that happens at home with him.
It's more supposed to be something like Garfield and Peanuts than Avengers or something like that.
Okay. No, that's what I'm saying, though. You have all kinds of different comics. You know, if you're going for a Charlie Brown kind of character, that's fine. That's fine. It doesn't have to be serious. It doesn't have to be. It can be light and easy. Charlie Brown has been around for a long time. Before he passed away, I knew the guy that would do his cartoons was Bill Melendez. It was Jim Schultz and then Bill Melendez. But so you have ideas. So take a look at the Charlie Brown and Garfield cartoons. Garfield always liked lasagna. You got lasagna, you got Odie. You got Odie's another conflict character. So Garfield always is trying to eat lasagna from Jim, the owner. And then Odie is always scaring Garfield because Odie's very happy and optimistic. Garfield's kind of lazy, chilled out, and laid back. Yeah, John's the owner. You got it.
Well, my comics is actually pretty new, but it holds a place to my heart, so I don't really change him that much.
No, you don't have to change him. You don't have to change him, buddy. I'm glad to hear that you care about your comic. When we create things, they're like our babies. We created this. This is ours. You care about it. So you don't have to change him, but you can have a story. What does he like to eat? Nathaniel, your robber. Is he big? Is he tall? Do you have a sketch of him?
Yes, I have a sketch of them.
Let's take a look at him.
They're very rough sketches, so I'm really trying to get a good grasp on what it's supposed to be. He has a very long head and he wears a mask all the time.
Okay, very cool. Okay, so start brushing up on that because next week we're going to start talking more focused on characters. So if you can have a finished character or something closer to being finished that we can work with, then we know who our players are. So Nathaniel, working on a story with a character that's a thief that never gets what he wants, is that something you'd like to work on?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Keen?
Well, I already am making a comic. I don't know if I'm supposed to change it or not.
Well, we're gonna do a brand new one.
Yeah.
We're doing a brand new one. So you can take the one you've done and either change it or do another one. Or create another, you know how you have multiple comic books, comic book 1, 2, 3. You could do a different comic book. if you're working on one from the other instructor's class, then you can work on that too. I don't want to conflict with what everyone. I don't want to give everyone too much work. So if you look at the tale of Peter Rabbit, the story behind that is this little rabbit gets into mischief, gets chased around by the farmer, comes home, mom puts the rabbit to bed, gives the rabbit tea, and goes to sleep, and that's the end. And that's the story in a nutshell. That's the story of what happens. And the lesson or moral to the story is, listen to your parents, don't wander too far from home. You can get in trouble. But that's the story behind Peter Rabbit, or Peter Cottontail, which was same character, different author. So you can write little stories and then maybe flush them out later on what you want. Scott, next slide, please. Full Metal Alchemist. The story behind that. Do you guys know that story? Full Metal Alchemist is these two brothers that grew up in a make-believe world of magic, alchemy. Harry Potter. Harry Potter's magic. It's just alchemy is another word of magic. And their mom passes away, so they try to bring her back. And in the process, they're young kids. They don't know what they're doing. And it goes terribly bad. A brother loses his arm and leg, and he takes his brother and he puts him in a suit of armor. So his little brother is now this giant knight-looking character with this little kid's voice. It's a pretty cool, pretty creative story. And then Wilcox Smith, Jessie Willcox Smith, she was just an illustrator. But all the character sketches that you guys do, start thinking about if they have a story. Start thinking about, like, it's cool to have a cool drawing, but what's your character about besides just a drawing? Is it a flesh and blood character like Bugs Bunny? Bugs Bunny has his character. Though the character of Bugs Bunny changed because of the different directors. Chuck, I think, was one of the more successful directors of Bugs Bunny. Gave him a little more of an attitude. Like he was cool as long as you didn't mess with him. And then as soon as you messed with him, he's like, okay, now, we're going to have it out, So think about what your characters are. What you want your characters to be. Is your character a cute and fluffy little bunny? Is your character a thief? Is your character a cool dragon? Does your dragon have a horn, maybe? Does your dragon have a big snaggletooth or different crooked teeth? Or is your dragon friendly? Is your thief tall, skinny thief that can get through the, or what would be funny is if your thief is this big, kind of heavy guy. So it's hard for him to be a cat burglar. He'd be like a Garfield cat burglar because he's so big. So certain things to think about. See, that's funny. If you have a thief that's clumsy, because they wouldn't make a very good thief. Or what if you had a thief that was gassy a lot? He wouldn't make a good thief too, because you'd hear him. So certain things to think about if you want your story. Want your story to go in whatever direction. It can be simple. The thief can be trying to steal a donut, you know? Leah and Heather, you guys' story coming along okay? All right. So Jay, do you have an idea for your story? Okay. But just keep in mind, you guys, that we're only going to have 4 weeks to work on this. So the quicker you can get your story down, the faster we can focus on the drawing, the setup, the layouts, and in the character. So if it's all going to be about your character, don't worry about it, Jay. You can always do a collaborative. But if you want to, you can do collaborative with Nathaniel, Keenan, and myself, or you can do your own story. But like I said, it doesn't have to be anything big. Take a look do a Google search on the web. Do a Google search on the web about comic books, comic strips, and it'll help point you in the direction on setting it up, because there's so much to it than just a story. Are you going to color it? Are you going to finish it? Because a lot of times you have artists and you have inkers. A comic book, a friend of mine does a lot of covers for Deadpool, for Marvel. He does the drawings, but he'll take a drawing and he'll hand it off to somebody and they will ink it. He does great inking himself, but they will do the inking, which is a whole other different area. And then you have people that just do coloring. So is your comic going to be black and white with a little color? Or is it going to be all color? And then keep in mind what we talked about how much color you use, because if you put too much color, it's going to be too busy. So certain things to think about in your story, guys. Scott, can I get the next slide, please? So we talked about doing our own and doing the collaborative. Next slide, please. First week, we're talking about story. Next week, we're going to talk about characters. Week 3, we're going to do setting and layout. That's going to be where our characters live, where the action takes place. Now, keep in mind your environment. That can also be a character. Is the character mean? Is the environment dark and gloomy? Is it a bright, happy place like Disneyland? And then by week 4, we should be finishing up to get it all together and ready to print. Next slide, please, Scott. So once again, your basic story elements: plot, characters, conflict. Like Nathaniel was talking about a thief. Does your character want to steal a diamond, steal a donut, steal a banana? That's the challenge. That's the obstacle, the why of what your character is doing. Where is it going to be taking place at? Is it on Earth? Is it in space? Is it in a liquor store? And then the theme is the message or the lesson learned of, don't try to steal, don't try to steal and, be gassy, whatever you want. Next slide, please, Scott. Here's my contact information. So if you need to email me and you have any questions, let me know. If you have a question about your story, your character, if you're having a problem with your layout. Now, story, your idea for the story, that'll probably be your hardest thing. It'll be the most challenging thing because you've got great ideas. I'm sure all of you, I've seen your drawings. You guys got great ideas. It's a matter of trying to figure out which one to do, how practical it is you can pull it off in 2 or 3 weeks, how much work you want to spend on it. Don't do too much where you're not going to be able to finish it or it doesn't come out the way you want it. So kind of keep it relatively simple. And the next slide, please, Scott. Once again, you guys, thank you. Our classes, again, are based on donation. They're switching over to donations. So without the donations, we wouldn't be able to offer these free classes. You guys can go to chuckjonescenter.org. And if you want private lessons, either from Lee, Ben, or anyone else, you can inquire there too. Tater, looks like you're hard at work. What you got? Something to share? This one. Let's take a look at what you got.
I'm just working on a little doodle, so woo.
Nice.
I'm planning on working on storyboarding-ish my comic page tonight. So yeah.
Write a small script, though. I advise you to write a small script so you stay on track. It keeps you, step one, where you want to go, to B, to C, to D. So, because if you don't have a script, then your boards can go all over the place and you kind of lose focus. But yeah, that's a good one. Kat, you got something you want to share?
I don't have much. I was just sometimes I just doodle lots of small sketches because I naturally just draw small for some reason.
Okay.
And so sometimes I do some small little drawings. I'll break my page up into 12 little squares.
Well, here, if that's your thing, then you could do a sketch page. Do a sketch page. If you want to do a full page of all your sketches, and that's what you feel comfortable doing, you know, and give it a theme, call it something. You know, that's one way you can do it. You know, you could do a sketch page. Just fill a page up of all your cool sketches. And you can color it, you can ink it. All right. Anybody have any questions, anything to share before we sign off today? Today was a lot of theory. We didn't do any art, too many art lessons, whatnot, but story is important because there's so many different kinds of stories. Like Ain't Nobody was saying, there's the comedy story, Garfield. You know, there's the serious story. There's the epic story, the big story. So don't make it too hard on yourself. Keep it simple. Anybody want anything to share or have any questions before we leave? Jay, you thinking about doing a collaborative? Well, if you guys are thinking about doing a collaborative, I shared my information up there. Do you guys need my email address again? You guys got it? There it is up on the screen. If you need my information, take that down if you have any questions. If you decide to do a collaborative, please let me know so then we can figure out who's going to work on what part of the story. Good job. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Story's kind of a heavy thing, but do a Google search on comics, story, writing a comic book, and that'll help give you an idea or point you in a direction. All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week. We're going to talk about character. So if you got character ideas, we'll work on those.
Bye. Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.